These covers just decimate my entire soul. And this iron throne and people dying over it. So this actually is both in a haul and possibly in an unhaul. So I've been on a book buying ban, she says in her book haul video. Hi, my name is Soleil and this is the Little Reader's Corner. Today I'm doing a haul. So this is a haul of the books I've acquired in about the last 6 months. Do we have regrets? Well, now that I'm moving, maybe? So this haul consists of both physical and digital books. There are a lot of physical books. We're gonna try to keep it short and snappy because I don't have that much time to film this video, if we're being honest. And don't we just love it short and sweet? We want to get to the point, right? Let's go. So we have about 25 or so physical books. Mom, Dad, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, don't judge me, and please click off the video because we don't need to feel the shame. Okay, we feel the shame. We feel the shame. It's fine. So let's get started. First off, we have a book that I had as an ARC, and I bought the book before I had read the ARC. So, you know, that is well played. It is by Jen DeLuca. This is the second book in this Renaissance Fair series. I don't know what the series is called, but the first one was Well Met. The first one and this one are basically romance stories that take place at Renaissance fairs. So if that sounds good to you, if you are interested in that and these are a good time, the only thing I will say is the back basically spoils the entire book. So don't read the synopsis because I haven't read this yet because I read the back and I started reading it and I realized that it spoiled everything. So I'm waiting until I hopefully maybe forget the synopsis. Next we have 2 books that I already own in different editions. Yet again, Mom, like, click off this video. And that is these 2 editions of The Lord of the Rings. I started doing a Lord of the Rings read-along video. I am probably going to start the second one sometime pretty soon, which is exciting. But I mean, one day I was at Barnes & Noble and look at these covers. These covers just decimate my entire soul. These are so beautiful, so beautiful. So I just, you know when you're sad in Barnes & Noble and this looks at you and you're like, you know what, I could taste happiness. And it tastes like this. So, you know, Lord of the Rings, we kind of already know what it is, hopefully, maybe. I'd say it's a pretty good time. Next up, we have this lovely little book that I picked up at Target. Sticker is still on. I haven't tried to take it off yet. I'm just lazy. So this book is You Had Me At Ola, and it is by Alexis Daria. This just sounded like a cute rom-com situation, a lot of drama, a lot of intrigue, a little mystery. Basically, it's after a messy public breakup, a soap opera darling finds her face splashed across the tabloids. She returns to New York to star in a bilingual romantic comedy TV show. And then she runs into a man that was acting previously as the star of a telenovela, but then his character was killed off. So it looks like they both kind of have their careers and their reputations on the line. So both of them really want to sell it in this new TV show program and want to kind of get their names back out there. So they decide to really just zhuzh up the romance and just really get it on, and then maybe a little romance sparks as well. Sounds like a good time. I can't wait to read this. Next, we have a book that I was supposed to read for a book club, but it was taking place when I also coincidentally took some time off of YouTube because I was very stressed and in school, and that is The Train to Impossible Places, and this was written by P.G. Bell. So this was the book club pick for A Touch of Whimsy. I started reading it, it sounded fantastical, beautiful, whimsical, and I just was too stressed out with school. So I still have to read this. Basically, I think it all starts off when a kid wakes up in the middle of the night and there's a train in the middle of their living room, and this train travels to impossible places. So I think it goes to different realms, and it's kind of about this kid and their adventures. So it sounds really cute. I want to get to it. I just haven't. Next, we have 2 books that I read for my Dark Academia reading vlog, which you should definitely check out. It's a good time. I had a good time. I basically was Dark Academia for 3 months, probably longer. It was actually more around 4 or 5 months, but you know, Those two books are The Secret History by Donna Tartt and If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Loved both of these books. You should definitely check out the reading blog if you want my full thoughts on them. But first off, we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and this is basically the classic dark academia book. This is the one that a lot of people talk about. It's about a group of students in this New England, kind of like older college. I think it's at some point in like the 1980s maybe. I'm not so sure. Basically, it's about these misfits at an elite college. They're all in the Greek program, I think, or the Latin program. I'm pretty sure it's the Greek program. They're all pretty hoity-toity. It's really interesting. There's a lot of different character dynamics. And then there's kind of like a murder mystery that goes on as well. So that's really interesting. It's a good time. Then, as I mentioned, we have If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So this is also about a group of misfit students, but they're attending a theatrical arts institution. So they're all actors. I think it might actually just be a general art academy, but they're the actors. So it's following that storyline as they're kind of going through college and like things are happening. There's a lot of drama. But there's also another storyline where it's one of the characters and it basically starts off, I think like 30 years later, and he just freshly comes out of jail. So you're kind of figuring out what happened, how did he get in jail, how do these two storylines kind of connect. Really interesting, a good time. And then next up I have these two Spanish books. I have short stories in Spanish. I read the Russian version of this. Basically in a beginner's volume of a bunch of short stories in Spanish. It has like some activities towards the end as well. It highlights certain verbs and new words. And I am actually technically intermediate level in Spanish, but I just haven't practiced it enough in the last like couple years. So I figured I would just kind of start back at the bottom and just refresh everything so that I can be a little more confident at the intermediate level. So this so far has been a good time. I haven't really gotten that far into it, but I look forward to doing so after I get my bachelor's degree. And then the next one is also pretty straightforward. It's Spanish Verbs. So really, it's just a bunch of common Spanish verbs and all of their conjugations. I already have like the 501 Spanish verbs, but it's very thick and there's all of them in there. So I think that this is a little bit more of a straightforward, a little bit easier way to get back into just refreshing all of the verbs. So I think I'm more gonna start on the lower level, rememorizing all of the verbs, just refreshing my memory, and then going back up to the 500 verbs. On to the next stack of books, right here. So here we have Felix Ever After. This is written by Case and Calendar. I think a lovely individual got this for me for my birthday or for Christmas. I'm so sorry, I don't remember. I'll say who it is right here after I figure it out. I think someone lovely purchased this for me, but I've been meaning to read this for literal months. It just hasn't happened yet. It's one of those things where it's like 350 pages, so it's right at the edge of being a medium length book and being more towards what I consider to be the longer size. So I just really got to get into it because this sounds fantastic. This is basically about Felix's love, and the way it's described is that Felix secretly fears that he's one marginalization too many. He's black, queer, and transgender, and he's just trying to find his happily ever after. And when an anonymous student starts sending him transphobic messages and publicly posting Felix's dead name along with side images of him before he transitioned, Felix comes up with his own plan for revenge. So this is all about Felix trying to find love and just kind of going through the regular stresses of high school with a lot more added layers onto that. I think this is going to be a fantastic book. I've only heard fantastic things about it and I just really want to get to it. Next up, we have a book that I haven't finished yet. Look how far I'm in. I'm almost done with this. It's The Thieves of Weirdwood. This is written by Christian McKay Heidecker. Sure. This is basically about these two younger boys, and one day they go into this creepy old mansion because they're trying to steal something, but then they happen upon all of these weird, fantastic elements, and they figure out that this place is actually home to a society that takes care of all of these portals into other worlds. So when they're caught by these people, they make an arrangement and they end up having to go through these portals to kind of the alternate reality of the world that they're in. and they have to go on a couple missions for them to kind of set the scales right. I was moderately enjoying this. I definitely think it's more of a 3-star read. That's why I just really didn't finish it, even though I'm like decently close to the ending, like 200 pages in. So I feel like I should finish it, but it's okay. I'm not sure. I also don't read a lot of middle grades, so that could also be something that's kind of impeding my interest in it. I enjoy middle grade, but sometimes, you know, it's just not, you're just not feeling it. Next, we have a lovely book that I finished, and that is You Should See Me in a Crown, and this is by Leah Johnson. I loved this book. I believe I read it within a day. If not in a day, then in a day and a couple hours. I adored this book. It was so good. Oh my goodness. So this is a contemporary romance, and it's about Liz Lightly. And she basically goes to this high school where everyone is completely obsessed with prom. She doesn't really care. But when she gets into her absolute dream college and finds out that financial aid will not help her as much as she needs it to, she realizes that being prom queen actually comes with a pretty hefty scholarship. So you know what? She is going to campaign, and she's going to try to get on prom court so that she can get that scholarship and go to her dream school. This book is also queer. It is the cutest romance, definitely in maybe my top 10 favorite YA romances that I've read in like the past 3 years. Absolutely loved it. It's very cozy, very comfortable, and you should definitely check it out. Loved this. Next, I have another one that is a YA contemporary romance that I finished. That's right, this is A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow, and this is written by Laura Taylor Naney. This was about more of a 3-star read for me. I definitely enjoyed the last half of it a lot more than the first half, just because that's where a lot more character development started coming in, the action started really picking up. So this is about Lila, and she ends up going to England and staying with some family friends, and she was just hit with the trifecta, which is her grandmother passed away, her best friend decided to move to an entirely different country without telling her, and her boyfriend broke up with her. So she's dealing with multiple different kinds of loss and betrayal, and her parents just decide that the best thing for her is to send her to England and allow her some space to kind of recover and also just find herself again. She is very passionate about baking. She worked in her grandmother's panaderia with her, and she is absolutely passionate about it, and she looks forward to taking over the panaderia in the future. This was super cute. As I mentioned, it was a bit slow to start off with, but I think it really picked up more towards the middle. So, you know, if you're not really feeling the teenage feelings, then this might be a little more difficult for you to read. Otherwise, very cute. I'm sweating so much. The next book I have is a chonker. I would not have bought this thick ass book if it hadn't been 50% off. And that is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. This book is huge. This book is like 1,000-something pages. Okay, it's more like 800 pages. Why did I purchase this giant book when I was moving? I don't know. Actually, I do. 50% off on an adult hardcover. I mean, that makes this almost affordable. almost that you can buy it. I love Christopher Paolini's writing. Aragon was one of the first books that I really just enjoyed and devoured when I was younger. I haven't reread it since. I'm planning on doing a whole thing, rereading it. But this is his first adult science fiction novel, and you know what? I want to support the man. I want to read this book. It sounds really intricate and interesting. The little back snippet is space holds countless secrets. She just found the deadliest one. Hello, okay. It's basically about Kira, and she goes on this survey mission on a different planet, and she finds an alien relic. And at first she's very excited, but then something starts to move and a war erupts among the stars, and everything just explodes and falls apart, metaphorically, but maybe literally. We'll find out, won't we? So Kira has to face her own horrors. Earth and its colonies stand upon the brink of annihilation, and Kira might be humanity's greatest and final hope. That gets me very intrigued, so I really want to read this, but as we know, the problem is moving. And this chonker, I don't know how the hell this is going to happen. but I own it now, so I guess there's that. Next we have another chonker, but this one I specifically asked for my birthday because I've been wanting this exact edition to start reading this series, and that is A Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire. This illustrated edition is absolutely stunning. I mean, just beyond gorgeous. The pictures in here, I mean, come on, where is that one? Like, oh my goodness. This book is just absolutely beautiful. If you don't know what Game of Thrones is about, I'm probably not the best to tell you. It has something to do with multiple different kingdoms and this Iron Throne and people dying over it. It's like a high fantasy kind of situation. Definitely adults, a lot of sex and violence in this. Really looking forward to reading it. I did start watching the series, but then I got to a point where first off I was really stressed with life. So you know how that happens, you know. And then I like really wanted to read the book because I know at some point the series splits off from where the books are because of, you know, timing, writing versus TV show writing. It's different. So I really want to read this. I'm actually probably going to buddy read this with Lexi from Alexander Roslin. That's going to be a good time. It's going to be a while to read through this, but I'm excited. Next, we have the last book that was in my Dark Academia reading vlog, and that is These Violent Delights. And this is not the one by Chloe Gong. This is by Micah Nemereverer. I don't know, you try to say it. I can't say this last name. I have no idea. So I was initially very excited when I purchased this book. I mean, obviously, I'm a hoe for deckled edges. We just love deckled edges in this house. And it sounded really interesting. Then I did my Dark Academia reading vlog, and you can go to the vlog to find out all my thoughts about it because I DNF'd this not too far in. Really did not like it. It's basically about two angsty boys in a college university setting. They're studying philosophy, and it's very hoity-toity and angsty, but not in the way that I wanted it to be. And I really disliked this so much, but that's that. So this actually is both in a haul and possibly in an unhaul. That's right, folks. Goodbye. Hello and goodbye. Next, we have this tiny little poetry book, which I talk about in my poetry recommendations video. You should go check it out. It's a good time. The cover is interesting. Very terrifying cover. But this book I had to read for my Divinity Poetics class. It's my last class that I took for my English degree. And honestly, this was actually a lot better than I thought it would be. I mean, the cover threw me off to begin with. But in this, the author basically explores many of her different identities. Russian immigrant, queer, lesbian, femme, and like a mystic were all among her identities that she explores in this. She alternates between these really interesting structures where it's written in like a Craigslist ad or an email or a voicemail, and then it alternates with these Russian folklore stories from Baba Yaga. So that was really interesting. I enjoyed this quite a bit. Very short. It's an independent press, so I had to pay like $17. It wasn't available digitally anywhere else, and I had to read it for class. So, you know, that's how it goes sometimes. Next, I have a lovely book that was gifted to me by Maddie from Princess of Paperback, and that is Fence, Striking Distance. And this is based on the Fence graphic novels that I absolutely love, but the novel is actually written and adapted by Sarah Reese Brennan. So, have not read this yet. I'm really looking forward to it. It's like a decent length. Yeah, it's like 300 pages long. I really enjoy the Fence graphic novels, but they're very short. I mean, comedically short and tiny. So I'm really looking forward to reading this and checking it out. I really hope that the author of this worked with the author of the graphic novel, so hopefully everything still lines up. It's about fencing, people who fence. It's a good time. If you're into fencing, go for it. If you're not into fencing, probably not, but you know, good times. Next, I have a book that I really need to get to because this was a hugely anticipated release, and that is Majesty, and this is written by Catherine McGee. This is the sequel to American Royals. Basically, the idea of this series, if you don't know, is that if the founding fathers had created a monarchy instead of a democratic republic, then we would currently have kings and queens on the throne and not presidents. So that's where the idea comes from. And then of course, instead of senators or governors, then there's like the Duke of Orange County and that kind of thing. So I really enjoyed the first one in this series. I really look forward to reading the second one. I think it's going to be fantastic. The first one left off with a huge cliffhanger, and I just can't even wait to see what goes down in the second one. So that's where we're at. It's a good time. Next, we have a little political science for y'all. So this is one of the many books that I'm looking forward to reading that are international relations themed books. So if you got this far in the video, welcome. I'm an international relations major. Who would have thought? Also creative writing major. That is Rise to Globalism, and this is written by Stephen E. Ambrose and Douglas G. Brinkley. This is about American foreign policy since 1938 specifically. This is actually one of the books that's recommended for foreign service officers before they take the foreign service test. I am considering becoming a foreign service officer as one of my career options. So I really want to start reading the State Department's list of books for that, which is really exciting. So as I mentioned, this basically just goes over all of the major events and major decisions that the past presidents have made concerning foreign policy in America. I think this is going to be absolutely fascinating. It's quite hefty. It's about 500 pages long, so I think it's definitely going to take me quite a long time to get through, especially because I want to really digest this and learn from this. So this might be a while. But I'm definitely looking forward to reading this. I hope to read it over the summer, if not over the next year, so we'll see. Next, I have a book that I actually talked about in my March TBR. I'm pre-filming this a little bit, so I might have started reading it by this point. I might have kept it off until next month, who knows. That is The Color of Law. This is written by Richard Rothstein. So this is also more of a historical look at political science, and this is looking at the history and basically describing how federal, state, and local governments have systematically imposed residential segregation through racial zoning, public housing, subsidies, tax exemptions, and resistance. So this will be really interesting. This is basically just more history, especially American history. So this will be a really interesting look at just government policies and how certain policies actually ended up really impacting how America is today and the racial segregation that occurred from it. So that'll be an interesting read. Next, I have so far one of my favorite books of the year, and that is The Future of Another Timeline, and this is written by Annalee Newitz. I talk about this extensively in my time travel recommendations, so if you're interested in this, absolutely go over there because I detail really how this book functions, what makes it completely unique, and how amazing it is. But I'll give you a really short little summary of it. So basically what was really interesting was this is a time travel novel. There are two different timelines, and as you're reading this, events are changing through history. So this is specifically kind of a punk feminist book that has a group that goes back into history and is trying to make sure that this rival group does not change policies to take away rights in the future. So it talks about the Equal Rights Amendment and abortion laws, and it's basically these two groups trying to battle each other as they go back into time and make these changes. So as this is going on, you're learning really about how the future changes with each of these changes to the timeline. You might be entirely confused, not know what the hell I'm talking about, but I swear I give you a much more detailed description of how that works and what the hell goes on in this book without any spoilers in my time travel recommendations video, so you should definitely check that one out. Loved this book, absolutely will read it again someday. A fascinating read, but before you go pick it up, definitely check out the trigger warnings for this because it is quite an intense novel. It deals with a lot of serious topics, including the erasure of trans people from history, suicide, depression, death. There is quite graphic violence throughout it. So if you're interested in this, absolutely go check it out, but please keep those trigger warnings and content warnings in mind because it is quite an intense book. All right, we are getting close to the last few physical books that I have in this haul today. So we have 6 Angry Girls, and this is written by Adrienne Kistner. This was gifted to me by the lovely Maddie from Princess of Paperback, who is basically my glucose guardian when it comes to books. Thank you, Maddie. I really appreciate you. This sounds absolutely adorable and fascinating. I'm hoping to actually read this after my current read, which is the next book we will be talking about. So this is about a group of people who are in a mock trial group in their last year in high school. It's specifically from the perspective of Millie, who has a really rough time at home, and she goes to this mock trial group and it's basically very male dominated and she completely gets outvoted every single time. So at one point she just gets completely overwhelmed and she reads this advice column that inspires her to start her own mock trial group with these other women that are also very frustrated at society. So 6 Angry Girls. I think it'll be fun and honestly a good read. And it's very short, so we love that. Now, the last physical book that I'm talking about is one I started last night, and I am already more than 70% through. I absolutely am loving this book. This is Happily Ever Afters, and this is written by Elise Bryant. If you saw my 2021 anticipated releases, this was one of my 21 anticipated releases over 2021, and rightly so, because I am loving this book. So yet again, who gifted this to me? Let me hear it. Maddie from Princess of Paperback, my glucose guardian. Wow, sponsored by Maddie yet again. My goodness. This is about Tessa and her family who just moved to this new neighborhood, and she actually gets the opportunity to attend this really exciting arts program that has a writing program as well. She transfers in for her last 2 years of high school, except right when she gets there, she has major writer's block. She has been writing stories for her and her best friend since they were really young, specifically stories where they can see themselves represented in romance novels since they don't really see that much themselves, with Tessa being Black and her best friend being Filipina. So they create these stories to envision themselves in their own romances. The story has a lot of great conversations about representation and feeling included in society, but it also has a lot of really great disability rep in it, where Tessa's brother Miles has a couple disabilities himself, and I think it's very well represented in this book. I absolutely love some of the characters in this. I'm really enjoying this. I don't often finish books in a day or two, but this is just one of those ones where I picked it up to get a little distraction from my finals week, and I just kept reading and I just kept reading, and then it was 10 p.m. and I was on page 270. So if you want a good time, this is absolutely it. So those were all of the physical books that I hauled. Now let's talk about the digital books. So I don't know about you, but I love browsing the Barnes & Noble $2.99 or lower and the Barnes & Noble under $5 ebook section. Sometimes there's absolutely nothing, but sometimes there's a book or two in there that you're like, you know what? I've been wanting to read that and I can get it for $1.99. Okay, and that's what I've been doing. So I've been on a book buying ban, she says in her book haul video. But you know what? Even with the book buying ban, I'm just trying to save money and not have too many books that I have to ship, which too late, we're already here. But I recently got a lot of really fun ebook deals at Barnes & Noble, so let's talk about those. So first I want to talk about The World in Disarray, and this is written by Richard Haas. So I believe this is one of the other books that was on the Foreign Service Officer exam recommendation page from the State Department, or this might have just been an impulse buy from me. But the author of this book, Richard Haas, he is the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a dream job for me. Oh my goodness. The man has experience. I really want to read this book. It is also about American foreign policy, specifically looking at the history of it and where American foreign policy is today, or at least where it was when he published this. Another international relations book that I'm looking forward to reading. Next we have Hoodwich. This is written by Felix Hicks, and I talk extensively about this book and why you should read it in my poetry recommendations, so I will keep it very short here. This book was also on the reading list for my Divinity Poetics class. I ended up really enjoying this, so you should definitely check it out. I'm just gonna read a little bit of the book's synopsis so you get a little bit more of a full picture of what it is, since I think it does it a lot better than I ever could. So this is a riveting debut from poet Felix Hicks, and it is a reclamation of power for Black women and non-binary people whose bodies have become the very weapons used against them. Hoodwich specifically tells the story of a young person who discovers that they are something that can and will survive. So a fantastic collection of poems. It definitely deals deals with a lot of heavy themes as well, so know that going into it. But otherwise, it's a very good and informative read, and you should check it out. Next we have Graceling, and this is written by Kristen Kishore. This is that one book that got the cover change that now looks absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, you know the one. Was this a cover buy even though it's digital? A good question. I've been wanting to read this because I'm pretty sure my friend Tasia said it was fantastic. I don't remember. She might have been talking about this, or maybe it was something else. Yeah, decided I wanted to read this. It was like 90 cents or something on the ebook store, so I just kind of went for it. This is about Katsa, who was able to kill a man with her bare hands since she was 8. She is a Graceling, one of the rare people in her land born with an extreme skill. As niece of the king, she should be able to live a life of privilege, but graced as she is with killing, she is forced to work as the king's thug. And then she unexpectedly falls in love with the prince. So, could be very generic, could be very good. I don't know. The cover was gorgeous. It was like 90 cents. So next, I have Poor Economics, a radical rethinking of the way to fight global poverty. This is written by Abhijit V. Banerjee and Esther Dulfo. So this has won the Nobel Prize in Economics, specifically for how it covers global poverty and development politics. I read this for my politics and development class. We only were able to get through half of the book, but I really look forward to reading the rest of it on my own time. If you are at all interested in poverty and the cycles of poverty and how developing nations have struggled with cycles of poverty, definitely check this one out. It puts it in very simple terms, so it's not difficult to understand even if you don't have any background in politics or economics or development. You can still completely understand this book, so that's always a good time. It also has a lot of examples of how currently developing nations are struggling with their cycles of poverty, and how when NGOs or nonprofit organizations just throw money at a problem, it often does not really help. It can often make the situation a lot worse for that country and its people, especially if the people coming in and trying to help are not familiar with the cultural and social dynamics of that country and its people. So really fascinating read. Definitely recommend you check that one out. Next, I have Ascend, and this is written by Janica Stuckey. This is also one of the poems I talk about in my poetry recommendations video, so really check that one down below if you're interested in the poems I'm talking about today, because they're basically all in that video because I enjoyed all of them. So this book was specifically actually written over the course of 20 days when the writer was going through intermittent fasting and was conducting, I believe, somatic rituals in their home while writing this. So this is very much divinatory poetics in this book. It brings together a lot of religious and mystical aspects together in like a very surreal kind of poetry. Fascinating read, very interesting, and of course I read it for a class, so I read it pretty quickly. Next I have Scavenging the Stars, and this is written by Tara Sim. I very recently got this for I think $1.99 at the Barnes & Noble ebook store. What a steal. So this is about Amaya, and she rescues a mysterious stranger from drowning. She fears that because of these rash actions, she has earned herself a longer sentence on this debtor's ship that she is currently held captive on. But instead, the man she rescues offers her riches and a new identity. Throughout this book, Amaya is trying to get revenge against the man that ruined her family and stole the life that she once had. So this is basically a high stakes adventure or romance situation. It sounds interesting. It looks like a good time. It was $1.99. I just went for it. Next we have To Have and to Hoax. This is written by Martha Waters, and I read this for my Regency romance recommendations video. Wasn't sure how I would feel about it, but actually really enjoyed it. So this is written back in the Regency romance period of England. It is about a couple, a man and a woman, who have been married for I think 5 years once the story starts off. It starts off a little bit with them meeting, and then later when they're married and they're having a lot of problems. So they kind of start this like rival feud against each other where they keep trying to trick each other, and they start doing like little hoaxes and hijinks, and it's really fun, and they kind of grow closer through this little rivalry that they have together, and you learn over the course of the story what was the thing a couple years back that really just wedged itself between their marriage. A good time, some spicy romance, definitely a lot of the regal fanning of the face kind of thing, so it's pretty good. I also made the investment and I got the 3 first books in the Bridgerton series. You can get it as the Bridgerton collection on Barnes & Noble's ebooks. So I think I got all 3 for like $19. I just kind of went for the investment. I want to read these books. They sound really good. I want to learn more about the series. It's the books that the new Netflix TV show is based off of. It's Regency romance period in England, a lot of drama. Next we have The Monsters I Have Been, and this is written by Kenji C. Liu. I also talk about this one in my poetry recommendations video, and this was also one of the books I read for Divinatory Poetics. Wow, so much going on here. Yeah, so this one is basically a lot of poetry that combines different historical documents and relevant pop culture references all into poetry. So it's really interesting. It's called the Frankenpoe style or method, and it's kind of like blackout poetry where you take pieces of existing written items and make them into new poetry. One of them I thought was really interesting was I think like Darth Vader's speech from The Empire Strikes Back and Donald Trump's speech in something. It was interesting. They kind of flowed into one another, and yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Next I have A Winter's Promise, and this is written by Christelle Davos. I've been wanting to read this for some time, especially because the premise of it is sadly kind of close to a book that I was writing a couple years ago. So there are all of these floating celestial islands. That's always how you start off a story, right? They each have their own unique relationship to one another, and specifically the island that the main character Ophelia lives on, its unique relationship is that objects have souls. So Ophelia's just living her peaceful life until the powerful dragon clan comes and makes her leave her family and follow her fiance to a different floating capital. Sounds like a good time, sounds interesting. Next I have Cemetery Boys. This is written by Aiden Thomas. I've been wanting to read this since it came out, and then I saw that it was discounted for like $1.99 on the ebook store, and I was like, that is a sign right there. We need to read this very soon. So this is about a trans boy who is determined to prove his gender to his traditional Latinx family. So he summons a ghost. This ghost then refuses to leave, and this leads to a host of problems in different situations. So those are all of the books that I have to haul for you today. It was quite a lot. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button down below. Definitely hit that subscribe so you can find out more content. Check out those links that I have up top and down below for all of the videos that I mentioned in this. I hope you have a wonderful day and take care of yourself. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!